Warm greetings to you all and welcome to this webinar. I'm Peter Marr, Director of Alumni Relations. So one thing I know after having been in this job for quite a long time is that Wits graduates tend to do well wherever they are in the world and in every field of endeavor. But one particular area where Wits graduates have excelled in is business, to the extent that Wits is ranked in the top 100 in the world for graduate success as CEOs and entrepreneurs. Today, we're extremely excited to have one of these incredibly successful Witsies with us today. Mamongae Mahlare is formerly the CEO and now Executive Chairperson of the Takealot Group. We'll be taking a much more deeper dive into a CV when we get into the webinar, but just very briefly, prior to the Takealot Group, Mamongae was Managing Director for Unilever Sugar South Africa and played various roles at Appetizer SA, SAB Miller, Unilever, and was an associate consultant at Bain & Company. Mamongae has served on Wits University's council, was chair of the Wits Empowerment Trust, and currently serves on the Wits Foundation. She's also a board member of OUTsurance and property business RMH. Mamongae holds a BSc Chemical Engineering degree from Wits and an MBA from Harvard Business School. We're also extremely fortunate to have Professor Mills Soko with us today, who will act as moderator and lead the dialogue with Mamongae. Mills is Professor of International Business and Strategy at the Wits Business School and also serves as the MBA Program Director and Director of Development and Partnerships. He's a former director of UCT's Graduate School of Business, a highly acclaimed author, columnist, and commentator. Mills has had a very distinguished career in civic engagement, serving on numerous boards and advisory groups. He holds a BSc Social Science degree from the University of Cape Town, an MA in International Studies from the University of Stellenbosch, as well as an MA and doctorate in International Political Economy from the University of Warwick in the UK. Guests are welcome to pose questions during the webinar, and Mills will endeavour to raise pertinent ones during the dialogue. With that said, please sit back, enjoy this engagement, and over to you, Mamongae and Mills. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter, for your welcome and for introducing our guest today, Mamongae Mahlare, CEO Takealot Group. It is an honor for me to be able to facilitate this conversation. Thanks to all of you for joining us today too. You will have an opportunity to ask questions of our guests. Please use the chat box to write your questions or comments, and I will relay them to Mamongae. Mamongae, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon to share insights about your personal and career journeys.
Thank you very much, Mills, for having me. It's a great pleasure.
All right. Before we talk about the e-commerce business and Takealot, perhaps I would like to ask you 2 or 3 biographical questions so that we can get to know you not only as a business leader, but also as a person. I did some research here and I see that you grew up in Jane Fest in Sekhukhune, in Limpopo. What are your memories of growing up?
Thank you, Mills. You know, I grew up, as you mentioned, in a rural area with, at the time, we did not have electricity to the house. You did not have indoor toilets and plumbing. So very humble beginnings, but you know, the beauty about being young is if everybody like around you has the same circumstance, you tend to think that's normal, you know? Yeah. And so you grow up with a sense of freedom, a sense of also adventure, you know, in discovering and learning how to become independent quite young, because, you know, you have to go fetch water, you have to help around the house, you know, everybody has to pitch in. So, yeah, it was quite, I would say, a fairly free youth.
Yeah. Your parents played a vital role in shaping your outlook on life and personal development. How did they do this?
You know, there's a lot that we as children learn from our parents, sometimes directly by the things they do or the things they don't do. My parents, you know, studied part-time from, I think there was the old standard 6, I forget what they used to call it, but you could get to that level and then transition into being, a nurse or some kind of vocational work. Doing matric at the time was optional, not necessarily essential, but both my parents studied all the way through, got their matric part-time, they were working, and even growing up, I remember many nights we would do homework with my parents also doing their homework, whether it was their undergrad or their master's degree. And so, I learned that, education is something that was important. It was a gateway out of, I guess, poverty or mediocre circumstances. It was a doorway to opportunity, and that you had to work hard for it. And sometimes also the quality of the life that it will open up is more important than whether or not you get the financial rewards with it. Because, in those days, they did not get recognized for their contribution, based on their qualification. It was like, you're a nurse, you're a teacher, this is how much you're going to earn, and that's it. Whether you got, straight out of a nursing college or you had a PhD, it didn't matter, at least for Black professionals and at the time. And so the fact that they continued to grow their knowledge base, their skills base, in spite of the lack of recognition, but the fact that it would open different quality of jobs that they could then access, as well as really show the aspiration they had to be more and do more in spite of the circumstances. So I would say that it was the commitment to education, it was the persistence that is required, the work ethic, and as well as, doing what is important to you, regardless of what the external factors might say otherwise.
Let me talk about your education, Mamongae. You're one of South Africa's first generation of Black female chemical engineering students. You graduated from Wits University. You subsequently completed MBA studies at Harvard Business School. This is a three-pronged question, right? All right. What was it like for you studying at Wits? That's the first part. And the second part is, how would you describe the transition from engineering studies to an MBA degree? And lastly, how did these qualifications, these academic qualifications, shape your corporate career?
Thanks, Mills. I'll try and do justice to remember all the three prongs. So first of all, I mean, you can imagine I was at Wits in the early to mid-90s. One of the few Black students in engineering, let alone chemical engineering. It was extremely challenging course. I mean, you can imagine coming from, I guess what they used to call a Bantu education system, where, most of the way you do well is to remember. So like a lot of reliance on memory and not a lot of sophistication in helping you through problem solving, etc. And then you move into this environment that is in all aspects very high grade, very high standards in terms of the method of teaching, the expectations of the students, and the rigor of the content that one had to engage with. So it was exceptionally challenging intellectually as well as, socially, because, you can imagine, you come from a rural environment, and then you come to the big city, and now suddenly it's a diverse population. So there's, white, coloreds, Indians, people from all sectors of South Africa. So there's that excitement as well around just discovering the diversity of humanity in the country. But I have to say that, you always remember the professors and the role that they also played in, some would challenge you and you would take it as, oh, they're not trying to help my case here. But yet it was around trying to push you to make sure that you do better than you think you can. And you always had, there'll always be the professors that are quite supportive and always willing to give extra time. And the biggest difference also came with, very quickly, understanding who are the students that seem to get this content, and then how to you then engage with them and try and have them teach you, or exchange some tips here and there. And so I guess I also learned the importance of using the resources of the people around you, and not having any shame around saying, I'm really not getting this. You seem to get it. Can you help me? And that is something that over and over again throughout my career, I've been able to use to be able to get, deep into uncharted waters and come out swimming strong, is learning how to leverage others and to ask for help, and to invest the time yourself also in learning the subject matter. So I had an incredible time, and it was just wonderful to be able to finish. At the time, we just celebrated finishing on record time. Like, what marks you got didn't matter. It's like, I did it in 4 years. Oh my God, that's a great, because it wasn't that easy for many people to do that.
Yeah.
And without a bridging course, because I didn't do the bridging year, I just went straight into chemical engineering. So it was robust, to say the least. But also, that kind of experience shapes you, because there were a lot of knocks, a lot of times when you failed, tests and exams and had to redo, and you're thinking, oh my God, am I going to make it? And then when you come through on the other side, you just become even more confident that you can hold your own, and you've been able to make it through chemical engineering. And I have to say, one of the positives about doing engineering I've since learned is that everybody just assumes that you must be smart if you've got an engineering degree. And so it's a great bonus. It opens a lot of doors as well, which has been fantastic. The second question was about the transition to MBA. How did I find that transition? I think part of the transition started at Wits, actually, because we had, I think starting in third year, there was a process engineering, I think it was called Tom or something like that. But it was around application of engineering in business, so in process optimization. And that's where, I started to really engage with the interest in business, particularly as it was around how does engineering show up in the world, and how does it practically add value. And so I left with a curiosity about that, and it got cemented as I worked as an engineer on factory floors. And I used to be, the end point of, decision making. You just had to execute, marketing would say, we want these products in these formats. Whether your machines can do it or not, it wasn't their concern. It was like, this is what we want to do for the consumer, and with different formulations and stuff like that. And I was very curious to say, like, how does this happen? How do these decisions get formed, and why do they get made? And so I transitioned from that into a stint in consulting, and where I got to work on a number of major strategic business challenges. And that prepared me in a lot of ways for the transition into an MBA. So the leap was not that hard to make. It was also driven by deep curiosity to really learn how business works, or what are some of the considerations. And so it was also another environment, as you can imagine. Just being able to get into Harvard Business School was like quite a milestone in itself. And then you get there with a bit of imposter syndrome, because you're like, did somebody make a mistake? But you soon learn that there are a lot of people, whether from the UK or France, etc., that also feel the same way. So I think the transition was, a lot smoother from an academic point of view, challenging also in a different way, because the value is in your engagement. Can you translate the material and actually drive conversation in a particular direction, demonstrate your ability to learn from other people's input and build your arguments, as you progress through the class. So I think that was then a very helpful skill in terms of really engaging with people in business, because you never are the person with all the answers, and it's your ability to be able to connect the dots and to build your own and challenge your own thinking as you evolve in the business circumstance that really sets you apart. So I think that was a fantastic experience. And you come out of it also more driven to make an impact in the world and not just have a job. It's also thinking about how does my life become more than just a series of career moves, as it were, and so that was a great takeout, and the belief that you can impact the world, I think it's something that I took out of that experience. And I think as I went through both of those, I touched on your third question, which was how all of this shaped my career. So I won't repeat that. It's safe to say that all of your experiences, as I think someone said, like it doesn't make sense as when you look forward. It only makes sense when you look backwards to see how all of the pieces actually come together to help you be, who you are at a point in time. So I think as everybody thinks about their journey, it's, none of your experiences are worthless or mistakes. They're all useful building blocks to a future that you don't yet quite know.
Right. Mamongae Mahlare, CEO, Takealot Group. Just to remind members of the audience that if you have a question or comment, you can type it into the chat box, and I'll relate to our guest. Now, I would like to talk about e-commerce and Takealot. You were appointed to this position, to this hot seat, in 2021, Following a string of senior executive positions you previously held at other blue chip companies, such as Unilever, SAB Miller, and Coca-Cola. How have you settled into this CEO role since you were appointed? And have you been able to achieve or accomplish your strategic priorities? How have you fared in terms of, pursuing your strategic priorities?
Thank you. Mills, the journey never ends, right? So, sometimes when you talk about, have you achieved your strategic objectives? I'm like, if I've achieved them, it means that there's far more that are still on the plate, because we live in a very dynamic world, and e-commerce in particular has been particularly dynamic in the last couple of years, through COVID, post-COVID, through the wars that we're seeing and the economic strain that we're seeing right now. So I would say that I've settled well into the group. I love the diversity of having Takealot.com, which is our general merchandise business. We have Superbalist, which is our fashion and apparel business. And then we have Mr. D, which is for all your on-demand needs, whether it's food, groceries, pet, etc. And what I have loved and been able to continue driving are a couple of things which were around. One is broadening the access of e-commerce to every South African. One of the great things that I love about this business is we deliver to you wherever you are. So even in your hut where there is no address, in rural areas, we get there. And I know this because I'm from a rural area, and I have lots of colleagues from rural areas, and we deliver to places without an address using technology. And that broadening of access for me is quite important, because a lot of times early adopters of these digital services tend to be focused in urban high income areas. And yet a lot of the underserved areas in terms of retail, being, peri-urban and rural areas, become ignored. And being able to provide access to quality retail has been one of the biggest moves that we've been driving. And even to the extent that a couple of months ago, we launched our township initiative, which is now taking it that step further and saying, how do we make sure that we leave no one behind, and we provide the tools and the know-how that will help others be able to continue to drive the adoption, to benefit for the convenience and also from the value, because it saves a lot of money in terms of transport. And a lot of time, because, a lot of people spend their Saturdays, doing all sorts of manner of shopping. And if you just do it, in the comfort of your home at any time of the day, we are able to deliver to you, quite quickly. And some of the things that we've also been able to drive is, increasing the speed of delivery. Before COVID, people were quite comfortable to get their orders within 2 or 3 days. And over that period of time, it became very clear that that's no longer good enough. If you want more and more of people to be able to, to choose to buy online, make it even more frictionless. And so now you can have stuff delivered same day or next day. And we have introduced Takealot More, which is a subscription program that allows people to be able to have free deliveries. And it's literally, it ends up that you gain much more if you're a subscriber than not, because you know, you get a lot of free deliveries without thresholds, etc. And more importantly is even advancing to get some of the Takealot general merchandise available in 60 minutes using our Mr. D platform. So if you run out of a charger, or sometimes people, their laptop crashes, or just because you can, you know, you can order you know, quite a large selection that is available within 60 minutes. So it's also around how we're using the different propositions of each business to be able to integrate and provide a solution. But I would be remiss not to mention, you know, one of the things that I'm particularly proud of, which is the value of the marketplace, where entrepreneurs, everyday South African, can be able to start a business by being a seller on takealot.com, where, you know, we have over 2 million products listed, majority of which are listed by entrepreneurs. And, you know, we have over 10,000 active, you know, entrepreneurs, and in the ecosystem has enabled the creation of over 33,000 jobs, right? Now, I think just the ability to be able to provide a go-to-market solution for a lot of businesses, because a lot of people have great ideas, great products, but how do you get it to market? It's the biggest challenge. And we provide a ready market with over 4 million customers. We provide all of your supply chain and logistics and marketing solutions. So it's really a critical role in terms of enabling businesses to be able to germinate and to grow. And that's something that I'm particularly proud of. So it's the enablement of businesses and driving, you know, the economy, job creation, and democratization of access, as well as then, you know, continuously innovating on our value proposition to make sure we're addressing the needs of South African as they evolve. And believe me, South Africans are, you know, very astute consumers, and they move with their times very quickly. So, you know, propositions like Take a Lot More and Take a Lot Now are some of those that are delivering on that proposition.
Right. There's a question from Arthur Maiden. The entry of new players in the e-commerce seems to make a lot, or seems to make Takealot hot under the collar. Surely the opening up of the e-commerce space is unstoppable and ultimately benefits the consumer in several ways: choice, competitive pricing, etc. What are Takealot's concerns in allowing an open industry like has happened across the globe?
Yeah, that's
about competition, you know, the entry of, you know, Shein and Amazon and Temu and
yeah, it's a question I get a lot. And you know, let me first say that, you know, any business person in any business you're in has competition. And so it's inevitable, and you have to welcome it, because it also makes you a lot sharper, right? Because now you really have to be, you know, more dynamic, more competitive, and really think about, you know, what's your market play. So I think the other thing is, you know, the fact that all of those international players are coming into the country, really, for us, I've taken it as a compliment in terms of saying that clearly companies like Takealot Group has built a business case that demonstrates that there is value to be created by entering the South African market, right? Because it's not a coincidence that they're all coming at this point in time. And and all together, right? So there's that point. In terms of, how do we think about it? I think we got to, pull out of just the company perspective and think firstly broadly in terms of the South African, development of e-commerce. We're still sitting at between 4 and 5% of total retail, which is a 1.2 trillion rand business. So when you think about our penetration at 4-5% compared to our peer countries in Latin America and Asia that are sitting anywhere between 10 and 15%, you got to see that there is massive headroom for e-commerce in South Africa to continue to grow. And contrast that with, the expanse of the country and the role that e-commerce plays in democratizing access to those, quality retail products at the same price as you can get it anywhere around the country. There's great value for a lot of South Africans that can benefit from e-commerce. And so I think, the sector itself is ripe for growth. I think the entry will increase investment in e-commerce, and it will also, accelerate the pace of, evolution of the sector, the adoption of e-commerce by South Africans. And that can only mean growth for us and for all the players that come through. I think when it comes to, anything else, we're always saying that let the competition be on an even playing field. Let's make sure that there are no market distortions or, whether it's regulatory imbalances. We got to make sure that all the players are playing in the same, under the same set of rules, because you want to make sure that the best wins. And for us, we believe primarily that our focus has to be on addressing the South African consumer and providing all of their needs and their aspirations, and really making sure that we are not formulaic in how we think about our solutions. We understand the diversity of the consumer set and think about our key consumers, with their different requirements, and make sure that we win with our consumers, because at the end of the day, the one that's gonna come out ahead is the one who gets the consumers to vote for them with their rands every day.
Yeah,
so that's our obsession.
All right. Thank you very much, Mamongae. I've got, judging by the number of questions that have been typed into the chat box, there's a lot of interest in this webinar. So I'll take 3 questions, right? You have a pen and paper there. So the first one will come from Tyrone. Mamongae, what are your tips for South Africans in regard to the e-commerce space? Are there gaps in our local market that we should be looking to fill? That is from Tyrone. And there's a question here from an anonymous attendee. How do you get around the racial and gender bias as an African female? You may have covered this, but finding myself being cut out due to my skin color can be disheartening. No matter how much I can bring to the table, having ideas just taken and no recognition being given. And then there's another question here about, okay, take another person because this is the same anonymous attendee. Okay, this is from Engrito Mahlujana. While doing my academic research on e-commerce in South Africa, I found that companies such as Takealot are reluctant to support academic research in this space by responding to questions. How will knowledge be developed if this continues to occur? we can take those three for now. And you want me to ask other questions, or you want to take these? Yeah.
No, I think let's take three, and then we'll take.
And then we get right. Okay.
We'll take from there.
All right.
So Tyrone, I think the gaps as a potential seller looking to really build your business on a marketplace, if that is, the angle of your question, that's how I will answer it. And I'll answer it to say that, I've mentioned that, for example, we have over 2 million products listed on our platform. That means really that you need to choose the area that you're most interested in, that you'll be passionate about, and that you will be willing to invest your energy to drive on the platform, because people buy an immense amount of diverse products, right? And we find that even amongst some of the bigger sellers or the medium-sized sellers, there isn't a one-trick pony. There isn't one, silver bullet product that's a sure way to the top. You find that a lot of people are, at least selling, 2 or 3 or 4 different products in different categories. So it's really around making sure that you pick your area, you play in it, and because the more you understand it, the more you'll be able to understand, how do I price, when do I promote, what selection is moving and what is not moving, and you'll be able to find opportunities because you understand the space. So that's my answer in terms of that, is that there are opportunities across the whole spectrum, from people that are manufacturing electronics, like some people have phones, have developed low-cost phones that they're selling on the platform, and there's a South African guy that's done that. People have built their beauty business, from face creams to hair products, South African that have started in the kitchens and back rooms, building these products that obviously have to get accredited before they can be sold on to consumers. And then you have people that would, there's beer, so there's food products, and there's clothing, there's homeware. So really the world is your oyster. You need to just choose your niche and become very good at understanding what the offerings are in that space. And then I'll move on to Anonymous about being cut out, being dealing with issues of race and gender. And it's a tough one to answer, because you cannot apologize for who you are, and you cannot withdraw from engagements because you perceive others might not listen to you, or might not hear you. I think in a world in any world, whether it's in business or in academia, there's a lot that comes from one, earning your stripes. So getting the experience and doing the hard yards, but it's also about being confident to be able to speak up, and share your ideas in all of the meetings and engagements. And it sounds easy, but it's also sometimes the toughest thing, is, because we tend to also be our own hardest critic, and you criticize yourself before you even engage in the field of play. And it's about just saying, I'm just going to get my ideas out there. I'm going to continue pushing. I'm going to continue driving. And the results will eventually start to speak for themselves, and people will seek you out because of your consistency of your delivery. So I would say that, you will have those challenges, but they do not see them as obstacles. I think there's a lot that is within your power to be able to break through and make networks. You know, these journeys are not solo journeys. It's important to build networks in your workspace. It's important to build relationships with people across gender and race and religion, so that you also become comfortable engaging with that diversity on a one-on-one basis. And then when it's collective, it will also become less intimidating. So I think that's also some of the things that we don't sometimes spend enough time doing, which is building our own bridges in terms of understanding and understanding the individuals and being able to influence them, because a lot of influencing does not happen in meetings, it happens outside of meetings. So invest in building those relationships and breaking down some of those paradigms. It's a lot of investment, but it's well worth it, because it's the reality for every one of us. And then Enrico, about academic research. You know, I guess, you know, when you're still building the plane, it's kind of hard to understand, like, you know, how do I engage meaningfully in data that's shifting and changing every day? And whatever answer that I'm going to give you today, I can guarantee you, in the world of e-commerce, in 3 or 4 weeks' time, you know, things may have already moved on. So I think, you know, it's bear with us as the industry is evolving and emerging. And I think, yes, there's some things that, you know, we believe we can be useful in terms of providing a perspective at a point in time. But typically, you know, with academic papers, there's rigor in terms of data requirements and a history of data, which in our world is changing every single week, every single day. So there will come a time when there's maybe more of a trail to be able to analyze. But I think you'll find that, you know, we quite receptive in terms of engaging in areas where, you know, we believe there's value we can add. And it's usually not a, you know, discredit of the academic work, but an indication about whether or not we believe there's value we can add to it at that point in time, given what we know.
All right. Thank you. We're having a discussion with Mamongae Mahlare, who is the CEO of Takealot Group. Another 3 questions from the members of the audience. Mamongae, one from Karabo. Karabo wants to know, how does Takealot ensure the quality of their products? How do you make sure that your products are of the highest quality? And the other one is from Majuda, question. A very inspiring story to Mamongae. What are the risks that consumers of e-commerce business are exposed to, and how can these be mitigated? And then there's another question from Reynold Rusen. And Reynold says, data costs are a factor in e-commerce in South Africa. How can we overcome this challenge? Countries like Malaysia have very cost-effective data packages that allow the masses to participate in e-commerce.
Thank you, Mo. Well, let me try and deal with that. So, Karabo, about the quality of products, you know, in a world where you have over 2 million products and over 10,000 independent businesses that are listing their products. You know, it's always the process of how do you make sure that you don't make the process so cumbersome that nobody ever signs up. And it's also how do you make sure that, you know, when people do sell products, that there is quality control. I mean, we have our processes in terms of, you know, vetting the submissions before they are listed. But obviously, at the end of the day, one of the biggest contributor towards quality control is the reviews that our consumers do make, which help, you know, weed out those with poor quality products very quickly. And we definitely, if you reach a certain level of complaints, your listing gets switched off, because it's important that that there is that tension between speed, ease of use, and quality control. And so there's preemptive processes that we follow. And then there's also the use of AI in mining the reviews to be able to highlight high-risk products that we then delist. It's obviously always an ongoing challenge, and we're continuously evolving our processes and our toolkits to move faster than some of the you know, errors that, you know, human beings may make. Because at the end of the day, we also are a marketplace that is led by, you know, by sellers who are human beings that make some mistakes. So we have to create processes to enable and support that and protect our customers, because for us, you know, this is an ongoing challenge that we invest significant amount of resources on a daily basis, because it's our job to manage the tension. And I have to say that, you know, we've made leaps and bounds in terms of really improving, but it's an ongoing process, and we'll continue to evolve all of our processes and toolkits to make sure that our consumers only get the quality that they expect, or, you know, you get what's advertised, as it were. And Margarita's question about, you know, the risks that, you know, consumers are exposed to in e-commerce. Look, I think some of them, others may think of them as risk, but, you know, it's just, you know, I guess, you know, some of the things around, you know, you only really get to know what you bought once it arrives at your house. That's, you know, others might see that as a risk, but the reality is, like, majority of what we sell is products that people would be familiar with in their reality. And the way we mitigate it is, if you don't like what you have ordered, is we come and collect it and you return it at no cost to you. And I think that's a phenomenal proposition that says that it takes away the risk factor for either it's for a variety of reasons. If it's you know, it's the wrong size, it's the wrong color, or you've decided, like, yeah, I thought I was gonna like this, but I don't. You know, and there's different categories of products and limitations, obviously, of products that you can return, but I think that risk-free return is there. Sometimes people say, well, what if I don't have, you know, money to buy, you know, that big fridge? That could be a limitation or a risk for a consumer. Well, what we have is we have a buy now, pay later solution, where your products, you know, you can split your payment over 3 or 4 months. So all of these solutions we deploy to address any of the friction factors people may have. You know, other people don't have, you know, credit cards. And so you have solutions for payment, like, you know, pay with a debit card, and you can also pay with instant EFT. These are all some of the solutions and risks that you're exposed to. But to be honest, it's a retail store, and the interface is on your phone. So a lot of the risks are more perceived risks than real. Because you never think about what risk do I have if I'm walking into my local shop. It's just because that's what is most common, and you're used to it. And the same comfort will grow in terms of e-commerce as more and more people use it and become more familiar with what the realities are. I think that, and then Raymond's question about data cost,
Yes.
absolutely agree with you. I think, we need less barriers to usage as possible. And, unfortunately, that's not something that's within our control as e-commerce players. But I think there's progress. I think as fiber becomes more prevalent, as telcos are also trying to increase penetration. These are some of the challenges that will push them to become more cost efficient as the solutions scale. And I think we should continue also encouraging more of our government services to be digitized, because one of the biggest contributors towards people being comfortable with e-commerce is if they having to use it in many areas of their lives, especially in transactions that are mandatory as part of being a citizen. So, the only way to apply for your ID is, you do it online, or, if you're trying to get a passport or your driver's license, or collecting all your bills, etc. So the more government services are digitized, the higher the demand, and the higher the pressure to then really make data more accessible. And hopefully it will become like water and more reliable electricity, no more load shedding. As the more it becomes more accessible, and the more there are everyday services you need to access online, then we can really start to unlock more e-commerce and other solutions that would benefit all South Africans, regardless of their income level.
All right, thank you very much, Mamongae. We have so many questions here. I can't believe it, and we have such a limited time. So perhaps if just if you can indulge us, and Peter,
Yeah.
I know we have to finish shortly, but maybe one or two more questions we can then conclude it at 4 o'clock. And I would suggest then, Lerato, that some of these questions, because you're recording these events, you send them to Mamongae, to review, on in a personal, time, because we don't have much time here. But there's one question there that the Takealot policy on returns is problematic to your sellers when it is abused by your customers who damage a product. So what is the policy? What processes are in place to help protect the sellers from this type of abuse? And there's another one which says, how does Takealot ensure that the onboarding and vetting process is not overwhelming for entrepreneurs who want to list their products? I think we can take those two and conclude.
Thank you, Miles. And so I think the question about onboarding is that, onboarding, there is an event part, which is, your first couple of months, but then, all the sellers have continuous support regardless of whether you've been on the platform for 3 months, 3 days, or 3 years, or even 13 years. So I think, you know, we do our best to try and make sure that, you know, there is more comprehensive knowledge that the new sellers get upfront. And obviously the expectation is that over time, if they have other follow-ups, then you know, they can engage with seller support. And there's always, you know, some engagement opportunities, whether it's webinars, etc., to continue driving the knowledge base. So, you know, I think it's important that you start with a comprehensive onboarding, because, you know, you are starting a business after all, and a very serious one. And so really knowing how it works and knowing some of the things you can then ask later as follow-ups is also important, because success in the world of marketplace, it requires also knowledge, but also the investment of your time and applying and managing your business directly. It's not any, you know, it's a lot easier than having to run a physical store, but it still requires investment of time and building the knowledge to say how that's working. So I think that's important, and it's a balance that we will continuously evolve based on the feedback that we get. And the important thing is, like, it's a lifetime learning. It doesn't all happen in your first onboarding and then it ends there. And you know, I think in a way you almost answered the question in terms of the abuse. It's like, you know, we're using a lot of AI in our systems right now to try and pick out what I would call repeat offenders, you know, or people that game the system, you know, whether it's on what you were referring to in terms of returns, etc., or in other behaviors that can manifest. And it's part of you know, running a business, is you always need to make sure that you deal with the offenders, but without, you know, casting everybody with the same brush, and, you know, and making sure that you don't become too restrictive to other people that are really behaving quite well. So it's we're using a lot of all of the AI and machine learning to continuously help evolve our processes as we move along. And our commitment is always to continue to evolve, continue improving. Wherever we are, we're not happy with what we have. We always believe we could be better. And that's where our commitment and our investment is making sure that we protect the customer experience at all the touch points as much as possible, and continue to evolve our business in that way.
All right. That's how we come to the end of this afternoon's conversation with our guest, Mamongae Mahlare, CEO Takealot Group. Mamongae, we thank you very much for this. Was a really, really illuminating, informative, and educative session, and we thank you for your leadership and service to our country. I want to hand over now to Peter Mahe, who's the head of Alumni Relations at Wits University. Over to you, Peter.
Thank you, Mills. Time has just flown by. I mean, that has just been so utterly fascinating.
We need another hour.
And you know, there's enough questions that you can part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5. So Mamongae, we might be in touch with you again. That was, to use the phrase that kept on cropping up in the chat, was so inspiring. Mamongae is so proud to have you as a Witsie. Mills, we're so happy that you kept the conversation going so well. We feel we got to know Mamongae, the person, the business leader, the student. That has been really fascinating. So if there's no governance risk, I'd love to register my business card with Takealot and send you all a gift. If that doesn't work out, we'll find another way of sending you something. But we are extremely grateful for the generosity of your time and giving so much of your effort to this. I really appreciate it. To all our guests, thank you so much for the engagement. It's been incredible going through the chats. I was going through the list of all the names, so many familiar names. We were at a very distinguished guest list, I must tell you. So thank you very much to everyone. Just to end off to say, Wits is doing really well. We're still riding really high since celebrating our centenary in 2022. There's still a lot of excitement and enthusiasm at Wits. We would love to show you around campus. If you're ever around, please don't hesitate. Contact the alumni office. Just give us a call. But thank you very much for being here for us, and we'll see you at the next one. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. All the best.
Thank you. Take care.